What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to From the Bench. I'm your host, Will Meadows, and welcome to our Friday edition of the show where we have a ton of basketball to talk about. The SEC tournament is as advertised. It has been a crazy day of basketball as of this recording. Obviously, this is a Thursday for this to be a Friday episode. The Vols know who they have tomorrow, as they have the fake UT, as Texas picks up a big win that could potentially put them into the March Madness tournament as they beat the Texas A&M Aggies. But we have a lot of that to talk about. We're going to talk about some years past, why I believe this year's Tennessee team could be poised to make a deep run in March Madness and in comparison to teams in prior years for the Vols. But before we get into anything, make sure you guys subscribe to the channel, like this video, and leave a comment on where you think the Vols are going to be seeded in March Madness. I personally think it's going to be a 2 seed. Especially after A&M losing. Not that they were in some crazy contention for a 2 seed, but if we were to lose to them, I think that could have maybe vaulted them into it. I think Texas Tech is going to play a little bit of a factor in that as well, but we'll see. And also make sure you guys are followed to our socials. They are listed below. So, like I said, the Vols know who they have today. I guess at 3:30, the Texas Longhorns played an incredible game against the Texas A&M Aggies yesterday afternoon, finished in double overtime. It was a draining game. It was a physical game. That Tennessee's got fresh legs. This should be a game that they should win. Just going to put that out there. We struggled with Texas a little bit on the road this year. Texas is the 13th seed in the SEC tournament out of 16, only seeded ahead of Oklahoma, LSU, and South Carolina. But Oklahoma's looking good as well. Obviously, at the time when you guys are watching this, you'll know if Oklahoma beat Kentucky last night, but I'm recording before that as of right now. They don't play until 9:30. But anyways, like I said, the Vols know who they have. It's Texas. Trey Johnson, the star freshman, SEC Freshman of the Year. Jordan Pope, Tremont Mark, played an incredible game. Like I said, incredibly physical, and it went the distance. Like I said, 2 overtimes. There was a crazy amount of lead changes. Wade Taylor, first-team All-SEC point guard for Texas A&M, was getting to the rim. He shot like 18 free throws, and A&M is just a tough team, man. There's no doubt about it. In March, they could make some noise. I talked about it a little bit when we played A&M earlier this year when it was a top 10 matchup at A&M, but they're just so scrappy, man. They can look really, really, really sloppy and disgusting and not look like they're not very good, but then they'll just get 3 offensive rebounds on one possession, and that's kind of their brand of basketball. Buzz Williams is a great coach over there. So it'll be interesting to see. I think Tennessee, like I said, fresh legs, a great mindset. They know what's in store. They have potential to get a 1 seed. I think us, Florida, and Alabama are fighting for that 1 seed right now. Whoever kind of gets the farthest for that. Because obviously one of Florida and Alabama, well, not for sure, but Florida or Alabama has a very good chance of being in the SEC championship. And, if we win today, we should play Auburn in the semifinal of the SEC tournament, which I have a lot of faith in, weirdly. And we'll talk about a little bit about that later. I have a lot of weird faith in this team because I know as Vol fans, we don't want to have faith because we've been let down before. I have a lot of faith in this team. Definitely, if we match up against Auburn, we lost to them by 1 on the road. Questionable refs, just a game. It was a very sloppy game, ended in the 50s. So I have a lot of confidence in us being able to battle with Janai Broome down there, be physical with people like Chad Baker-Mazara and Tahad Pettiford and company. So I like how we match up against Auburn, but we definitely got to beat Texas first. Like I said, their scores are hot. They demolish Vanderbilt, and in my old gauntlet prediction, I had Vanderbilt in Texas' spot right now. I thought A&M was going to lose. I just thought that sloppiness would kind of catch up with them in a neutral site. I thought with Vandy being close to home, they would be the team, but Texas is hot, man. Texas came out and punched Vanderbilt in the mouth early. They got up on Texas A&M in the first half, and they just ran away with it. Not ran away with it, but they didn't. They pinned their ears back and they got after it. They look like a hungry basketball team. That win against Texas A&M more than likely pole vaults them into a spot in the NCAA tournament with teams like Ohio State from the Big Ten who have needed some wins and lost early. Xavier out of the Big East. Some other teams that needed some wins to get some bids haven't won. So I definitely think Texas is in there now. Vanderbilt, there's legitimately, especially, like I said, y'all will know this, if Oklahoma is to beat Kentucky tomorrow, I definitely think that they're in. It helped that Oklahoma beat Georgia because Georgia's in as well. But there could legitimately be 14 teams from the SEC in the Big Dance, which is utterly insane. But like I said, I think we match up well against Texas. Fresh legs. They're coming off of a gruesome game. And I think Chaz Lanier gets going early, and we establish the physicality early, and I think we come out and win that one. But you guys know my SEC tournament predictions. Obviously, I was not going to be 100% right. As of now, again in the morning, I'll know if Missouri was right, if Kentucky was right, but Arkansas was wrong and Vandy was wrong. So 0 of 2 there on the quarterfinal. But it'll be interesting to see that my SEC predictions are not going well right now. But as long as the Vols win it, I'm more than happy that way. Or at least beat Texas tomorrow. Because if we lose to Texas, I could definitely see us falling to a 3 seed. But speaking of seeding and everything with March Madness, I've been talking to my buddies. I've been talking to some other fans of UT, and I've been telling them I've got a weird amount of faith with this Tennessee basketball team. Like I said, everybody struggles with that Vols syndrome. They just don't want to buy in too much because obviously it's a different sport. But we go up there and control Neyland North with Ohio State and just get utterly embarrassed. That seems to happen a lot as a Tennessee fan. But I broke down our last 3 years in the tournament, and obviously one of them was not very good at all, but 2 of them were semi-successful trips to March Madness. So I want to break those down and kind of compare them to the team that we have this year. So my original statement, or the statement I'm going to come back to, is I think this Tennessee basketball team is the most complete team that we have had since Rick Barnes has been here. Well, let me take that back. Since Grant, Admiral, Jordan Bone, all them left. So in recent years, I think this is definitely his best all-around team. So last year, we went to the Elite Eight. Obviously, that man right there, Dalton Connect, was just, probably the second. He was the second best player in college basketball, without a doubt. Last year, he lost to the best player, and arguably, as much as Tennessee fans hate him, Zach Edey is one of the best college basketball players of all time. That could be controversial, but the guy was unreal dominant, led Purdue to the national championship last year, and is a back-to-back Naismith Player of the Year award winner. So it's hard to argue that. But the Vols lost to Purdue last year in the Elite Eight. In the round of 64, they got a quick win. But then, you fast forward, round of 32, you play Texas. A scary game with Max Amos and company last year for Texas, Dylan Sue. We had already played them that year, and this was, Texas was in the Big 12 last year. They weren't in the SEC, so you get a scary one, a close one against them. Dalton Connect struggles shooting the ball, but he finds a way, and so does Tennessee in general. And then we go play Creighton, who's got Ryan Kalkbrenner, Baylor Shireman, some very good scorers, and have some size. They're not a small team. A lot of people picked Creighton to go far last year. I picked Creighton to go far. I remember that. I had them beating us. But, Tennessee answered the bell in the Sweet 16 and got us to the Elite Eight against Purdue. Played the 1 seed out of our region in the bracket, and it was an incredible game, man. Connect had 37, but you lose to Edey, who has a 40-point double-double. And people can say whatever they want, calls this way, calls that way. Zach Edey's fouling. The reality of it is, and I've talked about this before when the game was happening, Zach Edey was getting fouled a lot too, and they didn't call it. But that's besides the point. But my point being, yes, that could be the one that you argue is a better team than this year because of Dalton Connect. But, if you follow Vol Hoops on Instagram, they just posted it, man. this is the first year where Tennessee has had 2 All-Americans on the same team since Ernie Grunfeld. Like, it has been years and years and years. Like, Ernie Grunfeld played before probably any of us were thought of. I don't know how long ago that was or how old you are if you're watching this show. I know it was way before. It was before my parents were thought of. So that's that for you. It's been a long time, man. So there's no doubt about it. We don't have the second best player in college basketball this year, but we have a top 5 point guard and a top 5 shooting guard. A guy that is, as much as we want to, and I'm one of the main people you can point a finger at. I have talked a lot about Chazanier this year, but the guy is a top 5 finalist for the Jerry West Award, which is this top 5 shooting guards in the country for a reason. So, and I keep telling myself if Chazanier can get hot, this team can go far. But that's a big if. I'm praying for it. But I think this team's deeper. Last year we lacked a lot of physicality, especially in that Purdue game. Like, J.P. Estrella had to come in and kind of be the physicality. Cade Phillips didn't play near as much last year. Obviously, Adu was our main big guy, and he didn't play much last year. He played 8 minutes in that game just because he was getting dominated by Zach Edey. He had no chance to match that physicality whatsoever. And shout out to Jonas Adu, by the way. He played 2 great games in the SEC tournament before they got knocked out on a buzzer beater today by Ole Miss, or a game winner, I guess. Like 18 plus in both games. Arkansas doesn't have their 2 best players, only have 7 guys in the rotation. So he got his time and really showed out. So shout out to Jonas Adu. But he couldn't match the physicality last year. And Toby Awaka was also our big man off the bench. He got in a lot of foul trouble, getting handsy with Zach Edey. Okpara has really turned up the physicality and it's night and day, the player that he was when he got here in the first few games this year to what he is now. We know Cade Phillips will bring intensity and physicality. We've got Igor is very physical. Like, I just think we have more of a physical, hard-nosed team. We've always had that hard-nosed defense, but in the trenches, I feel like that's where we struggled in years prior, and that's what I like about this team compared to the one we had last year. So that's my take on it, the team from last year. And so the year before that, the Vols lost in the Sweet 16 in 2022-2023 to the Florida Atlantic. I don't know what they're Owls, Florida Atlantic Owls, who went on their little Cinderella run as a 9 seed to the Final Four. That team was very good. John L. Davis, who's at Arkansas, Elijah Martin, who was at Florida. They had a lot of talent on that team. Vladimir Golden, who's at Michigan, had a lot of talent on that team, and they're playing at Power 5 schools, Power 4 schools now. So, but, they beat Duke in the round of 32 to end up playing Florida Atlantic. It was a very close game, but, you go back and you look, man, that team was not good. That was the year Sakai got hurt. Like, our starting 5, I can't remember it off the top of my head. I should have looked it up, but I think it was like Santi, Josiah, Julian Phillips, Kamwa, and Euros. Yeah, that's what it was. Like, that's not good. There's not a score in that lineup. Julian Phillips was underwhelming as a freshman here. I know some Vol fans love Santi, love Josiah James. I love them as VFLs, not as basketball players. I love Triple J. I don't have a problem with Triple J. Santiago Vescovi was worse every year he was here. I'm sorry if you guys don't like that. But that team was not very good, and they still found a way to sniff their way to the Sweet 16 and beat a Duke team with a lot of NBA talent on it. So, at minimum, there's no way, and I'll say this and we'll get smacked in the round of 32, but I just don't see a way where this team doesn't at least get to the Sweet 16 or the Elite 8. They're so much better. And obviously, the teams are different. You draw a different deck of cards every year. But if you can get to the Sweet 16 like that, you ought to get to the Sweet 16 with this team. And then 2021, 2022, that was Kennedy Chandler's year. We won the SEC tournament that year. He was incredible in the SEC tournament. And then we play Hunter Dickinson, who is still in college. This seems like it was forever ago. I was a freshman in high school. And I'm about to graduate. And we lose to Michigan in the round of 32, who was an 11 seed, barely made it into the tournament. And we lost as a 3 seed to an 11, which is not pretty. Just the team wasn't near as good. Obviously, Kennedy Chandler was solid, but the team just wasn't as good. Like there's not much of a breakdown to it. this team that we have right now is just so much better than what we've seen in years prior. And obviously the round of 32 is not successful at all. But Sweet 16, Elite 8 is good, man. I mean, obviously I know we won a national championship, but before that we won at least a Final Four appearance. We've never even been to the Final Four in school history. So I think we have all the capability. Rick Barnes is very experienced. He's been to the Final Four before, not with us, like I said, but with Texas. And I really think that we have what it takes to make a deep run. I know the media might not tell you that because sometimes we go in scoring droughts, and yes, that's a real possibility where we just don't score a bucket for 10 minutes and we end up losing because defense can only get you so far. But I really do think that this team is poised to make a deep run, especially in a lot of these guys last year. But we'll see. March Madness is very, very interesting this year because you've got teams like UConn who are playing good basketball right now, and you've got teams like Kansas who are starting to turn it around just a little bit, who were preseason very high and have a lot, rightfully so. They've got a lot of talent on that roster, just haven't been able to necessarily put it together. If you're a 2 seed and you win your round of 64, and then you've got to go play a 7 seed after that, I don't want to play UConn. I'll tell you that right now. That does not sound fun as a 7 seed or Kansas as a 7 seed. Like, I would not want to draw that. So it'll be interesting. I really think, or Memphis could be a 6 seed, 7 seed. Who knows? It makes it very interesting, and I think that all directs back to the portal, just because so many other teams are so competitive and they're older and more physical this year. So we'll see. I think the Vols are poised to make a big run. That's all I'll say. But I think that's going to wrap it up for today's episode. If you're watching this, I hope Tennessee's either winning right now, about to win, or have already won against the Texas Longhorns. And I hope, even though Ole Miss would probably be an easier game, even though we just lost to them, I hope we're playing Auburn. I think that I'd love to just see us play Auburn again. I'm excited for that. But again, that's going to wrap it up for today's episode. We won't have any episodes next week because of spring break. But thank you guys for watching. Go Vols during March Madness. I'll be cheering from my rear end in the sand. So excited for that. But again, thank you guys for watching, and go Vols.